Okay, let's walk you through replacing your rear tire slash motor for your E-RIDER. It's going to be a pretty simple process. I've got a couple tools here that we'll go over. One is going to be a 10mm socket. I have an 8mm socket that's going to be used for the screws on the terminal that are connecting the power cord to the controller. And then I've got some wire cutters here. That's really all you're going to need. We'll go ahead and do like a brief overview of what we're going to be doing, and then I'll walk you through step by step. The first thing that we're going to want to do though is make sure that we unplug and remove the battery from the scooter, and then we'll open her up and get going. Okay, so as you can see, I've unplugged and removed the battery. I've also gone ahead and unscrewed the two screws that are holding down this metal plate here. Let's walk around to this other side. So we're going to be dropping this rear tire. Right now you can see I have it on one jack. When I get to the point to where I'm actually going to drop this tire down, I'm going to add a second jack. That way I can keep this one raised, so I'm working on the inside of the scooter, and I can drop this one down. That way I can remove this and replace it with the new tire. What we're going to be doing though is we're going to be cutting these zip ties that are along the frame here, which will free up this power cord that is running from the motor in this rear tire to the box in the front here. So we'll be removing the zip ties with the wire cutters that I talked about. And then we're going to open this up here, and you can see that there are some additional zip ties, and we're going to go ahead and cut those too so that we can remove this power cord. Obviously you want to be careful not to cut any of the other wires that are in here when you do that, but it should just be 2 or 3 of these zip ties that we need to cut. And then we are going to open up this terminal, and this terminal basically has wires that are coming from the controller itself, and they're matching up with the wires that are coming in from the motor. And when we open it up, it'll make more sense. But we're basically going to be taking 3 of these out. It's going to be these wires here, the yellow, green, and blue. And then we're also going to be unplugging this large connection here, and that's really going to be it. So once we unplug this connection, once we undo these 3 wires, we're going to pull it through. There's a little hole down there. We'll basically pull it through that hole. At that point, then we can come and we'll remove this disc brake assembly. We'll add our second jack, and then we'll get a hex socket, and we'll go ahead and undo this bolt, undo this bolt, and then we'll be able to drop down this tire and then put the new tire on and do everything in reverse. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and I'll show you step by step how we're going to do it. Okay, so I went ahead and I snipped these wire ties that were along here, which, as you can see, it freed up this cord. And then if you come over here, I disconnected this large connection. Let's see if I can get a better shot of it. You can see it's the one that has basically the 5 or 6 different wires that are connected to it. And then it has the corresponding female that's on the connected to the controller. So go ahead and disconnect that, and then we're going to go ahead and remove these 3 wires here, the yellow, green, and blue. I'm going to remove only the wires that are connected to my power cord itself, which is the one that's running to the motor. The yellow, green, and blue that are connected running from the controller, I'm just going to loosen this up, and I'm going to basically put these nuts back on them to hold them in place, because they're going to stay put. I'm just going to take this new wire when I have it and marry them up to the other wires that are coming from the controller, and then tighten them down, and they're going to be good to go. So let me go ahead and remove these, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so as you can see, I removed the green, blue, and yellow that were coming from the motor itself. I left the green, yellow, and blue that's coming out of the controller. Just put the nuts back on there just to keep it in place so I don't lose anything while I'm working on it. And then, like I said, I also had this disconnection here that I've basically disconnected, and I'm gonna push this through that hole so that I can next drop this rear tire. Something to note, this red and black here, this is gonna be the power that's actually going from the controller into your battery. So you don't have to mess with these, keep these tightened down. We're just gonna be removing these 3 wires here. I'll go ahead and push this wire through, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do next. Okay, so I've pulled this through this hole here. There's the hole. You know, you want to be careful when you're doing this. Obviously, if it's the motor that you're taking out, I guess it's not that big of a deal. But I typically, whenever I'm saying that I'm pulling it out, I'm actually pushing it from the inside so that I'm not tugging on these wires. So I'll actually push it from this front end and push it through that hole so that it comes out and I'm not worried about, you know, tugging on these wires or anything. But now that we have that out, as you can see, I've added my second jack underneath the tire. We're going to come over here and I'm going to grab my socket wrench, and we're going to remove these 2 screws here, these 2 bolts, so that we can take this brake assembly off of the disc brake. That'll allow us to remove the bolts and drop the tire down. And there are some washers that are on the inside that'll fall when we do this. You can see there's typically 2 washers that are going to be on the inside of this brake mount here. And so this is removed. And what I typically will do is just let it hang there and it's out of the way. And now we can get to these bolts on either side. So we'll remove these 2 bolts, which will free up this tire and motor unit. We'll drop it down and we'll replace it with a new one. Okay, so I've gone ahead and just tried to loosen these up so it'll make it easier for me to show you guys what I'm going to do here. But essentially, I've got a H10 hex bit that I'm going to use to remove these bolts, just like that. So you're going to have one of these on both sides. So let's take that. I'm going to put it to the side. And then you can see that there's a little channel that this fits into, right? So the only reason I showed this to you is because when you put the new unit on, you're going to have to kind of make sure that this aligns and goes into this little channel here. The other important thing to note is that you want to have this power cable that's coming from the motor, you want to have it on the front of this arm here. So you basically want to have it on this side going towards the front of the bike. The reason is if you mount this and that cord is on the back side here, it's going to wrap. And so, sorry, I'm trying to do this and tell you guys what I'm doing. So that cord is going to go on the back side of this arm here. And unfortunately, when you do that, it'll wrap around this arm and it'll ruin the unit. So just like I said, something to note, when you're putting the new unit on, you're going to want to make sure that this fits in this little groove here. And then you're going to want to have this cord on the front of the stem going towards the front of the bike. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this second bolt here. And when you do this, you want to keep in mind, now you can see that I have the weight of the scooter towards the back here. So when I remove this rear tire, it's going to be heavy on the front end and it's going to want to tip. So if you did it right, it's going to be fine and it'll just kind of balance itself. But just be aware that you might want to hold it and you might have to adjust it to figure in on where the balance is. Just move it a little bit further back and it'll be fine. So let me go ahead and remove this. See, and there you go. So now, got my 2 bolts out. The weight of the scooter is further back, so it's balancing just fine on this jack here. I'm going to now remove this or drop this tire down. And you can see it just drops down. It's not attached to anything else. And so now it's free of everything. So I can take it out. I'll grab it. And there you go. So now we're ready to replace it with our new unit, and we're basically just going to do everything that we just did in reverse. Okay, so I went ahead and put the new unit on this bike here, and I started the bolts on both sides, and then I also ran my cord back through that hole there. So just a pro tip on when you're running it back through this hole, it's going to be easier for you to do it if you basically push this through first, right? So you're going to get that big piece through, and then it'll be easier just to get the remaining 3 wires in. But what I'm going to do is I'll take my hex bit, and I'm just going to tighten it up again. So I was mindful to keep this cord on the front of this stem, and then I've also got it in this channel here, and as you can see, it's flush with this mounting bracket, okay? And then when I don't have the phone in my other hand, I'll go ahead and make sure this is good and tight. But for now, that's what you want to just be looking for, is making sure that this cord is on the front side of this arm. It's on the front going towards the front of the bike, and then that this this arm here is sitting flush on this mounting bracket in this groove or channel. So we'll go to the other side. Again, I'll make sure that they're good and tight once I don't have the phone in my left hand, but that's essentially what you're going to do on this step. What I'll do next is I'm going to go ahead and connect this power cord to the terminal and controller, and then the last thing we'll do is put the brake pads and all that back on. Okay, so as you can see, I've connected my wires now. This connection here is connected. So typically, you'll see something like a label or something on the female end that's coming from the controller that'll say Hall, H-A-L-L. That's typically the sticker that you'll see on that connection. That's the one that you're going to connect that's coming in from the power unit in the motor. It's going to be a standalone cluster, so it's 5 or 6 wires, and it's not going to have anything else coming off of it. It's going to be a standalone. So that's how you know that's the one that is going to match the corresponding one coming from the motor. And then you can see here I've gone ahead and tightened down these screws, just making sure that I have yellow to yellow, green to green, and blue to blue. That's good to close back up. And then we're going to take our metal cover. We'll go ahead and make this clean and neat. Put our metal cover back on, put our 2 screws in, seal that up, and then we'll do the brakes, like I said, last, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, so now you can see that this is all closed up, looks good. You know, right here, you can add, what we typically will do is we'll add some black Gorilla Tape or something, or Velcro, or whatever the case may be, just to keep these cords and wires up against this wall here and kind of out of the way. It just cleans it up a little bit. I went ahead and put these 2 bolts back in, and as you can see, I went ahead and put the 2 washers on the inside. So I'm not going to do it right now, but here in a second, I'll put this back on and tighten it up, and that'll be the last thing that I have to do. But I want to show you this side here, so I went ahead and just added my zip ties again. It's important to remember to do this step because when you go to test this tire here in a second, when you turn the bike on and you rev that throttle, if these cords are loose, they're going to rub up against this tire and it's going to just peel that protective plastic coating off. So you want to make sure and zip tie these cords while you're thinking about it before you test run this motor. But I'll go ahead and tighten up this brake pad and then I'll do a little test run. All right, the brake pad assembly now is attached. You can see the 2 washers I've got my 2 bolts. They're all snugged up. I take this little brake line here and tuck it behind this little mount just to make it a little clean. Now you can notice I've got it plugged in and I removed that back jack. I moved the scooter, the weight of it going forward now. It's well balanced. That way my rear tire is clear of anything, so I can go ahead and turn this scooter on and turn the throttle and test this motor out. That way I know the scooter's not going to go flying off the jack. So let's go ahead and test this bad boy. All right, as you can see, we're back in business. It's that simple. Sorry for the coverage. I'm trying to film and do this, with one hand, and so it makes it a little bit tough. I'm telling you, once you've done this a couple of times, it's like a 15-minute job. But to start, if you don't have the right tools or if you need to get somebody to help you, it might take a little bit longer. But it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And it's just like everything else on this bike. There's not a whole lot to it. But hopefully this is helpful. And yeah, let us know what you think.